Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today on this webinar. My name is Sean Gorez. I'm a technical sales engineer with OpenVPN. We're going to start the webinar in a few seconds. But before we do, I'd like to mention that you can ask your questions at any time during the webinar. Go ahead, type it in the Q&A box. If time permitting, I'll answer all the questions as I receive them at the end of the session, or we follow up with an email and answer your questions. Today, we're going to talk about OpenVPN Data Channel Offload, or DCO, which is a new feature on Access Server. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and start. First, we're going to talk about Access Server, do a quick introduction to the product for people that they are not familiar with Access Server. Then we're going to talk about OpenVPN Data Channel Offload, what it is and what it does. And then I'll do demos. The first part of the demo is going to be how to enable and install DCO on an Access Server. Then we're going to see how to enable the DCO on OpenVPN Connect app. And then we're going to see the user experience when the DCO is enabled, either enabled on Access Server and the Connect app, or just enabled on one of the products, either Access Server or Connect app. So we're going to see what the user experience is and what kind of results we can get by installing and enabling data channel offload on our Access Server. So let's talk about Access Server. What is Access Server? Access Server basically provides a secure access to your private business network in the cloud or on-prem. OpenVPN Access Server is a self-hosted VPN solution. Make it very simple for quick deployment of a secure remote access and a site-to-site solution with a web-based admin user administration interface or admin UI and built-in OpenVPN Connect app distribution. We built OpenVPN Access Server using the OpenVPN open source code and additional open source software like an OpenSSL. So OpenVPN Access Server maintains compatibility with the open source project, making the deployed VPN immediately usable with OpenVPN protocol compatible software on many routers and Linux distributions. The official OpenVPN client, which we call it OpenVPN Connect, is available for Windows, Mac OS, both Androids and iOS environments. With this all-in-one solution, you can protect your business data communications, secure IoT resources, implement access control and network segmentation, and provide encrypted remote access to on-prem, hybrid, and public cloud solutions. So Access Server delivers the most critical features and functions you need to connect and protect your networks and your users. Cloud networks and mobile workforces these days give businesses unmatched speed and flexibility, but requires multiple layers of securities. Giving remote workers online resources and application access introduces a complex network security issues. So secure private access to online services is critical for businesses of every size. It doesn't matter. A site-to-site network secures your extended enterprise by interconnecting your corporate network and remote offices. So what makes Access Server different? Obviously, it's create a secure private network. It's easy to install, and you can manage everything through the admin UI. You're going to see that in a second. It supports both site-to-site and remote access, virtual networking. Also, you can use a cluster of access servers for load balancing if you have high volume of incoming connections, and the connections can be distributed across the multiple access servers. So let's talk about OpenVPN Data Channel Offload, or DCO. So what it is. Security these days is one of the most important things to consider when you're online. The more your online communications are secured when with encryption, it's the better. Now, data encryption has slowed down computing speeds in the past, which has improved with modern CPUs, but we can do more. So OpenVPN has just introduced a new feature that will increase the speed for its users by moving the data control to the kernel space. And we call that OpenVPN Data Channel Offload, again, short DCO. But before we start, let's see what is kernel space and user space and what the data control means. So kernel space and user space refers to different regions in the memory layout of a computer's operating system. These are distinct areas utilized to run different types of software processes. A brief explanation is, for example, for kernel space is the memory area where the core of the operating system runs and provides its services. This space is reserved for running the kernel extensions, and most device drivers. In the context, the kernel is the essential center of the computer operating system, the core that provides basic services for all other parts of the operating system. Handling of the network packets happen mainly in the kernel, and then data is handed over to user space programs like your web browser, email client, and so on. Now, the user space, on the other hand, refers to the memory area where application software and some drivers execute. When you run an application like a web browser, a text editor, or a game, it is executed in a user space. User space applications have restricted access to the memory and must make system calls to the kernel in order to perform lower level tasks that interact with the hardware. This basically ensures that the user's applications cannot interfere directly with the core of the operating system, helping the system maintain stability and security. If a process in the user space crashes, it's less likely to impact the whole system compared to a crash in the kernel space. As you can see in the diagram, the higher up in the layer, the further away you are from the hardware and the slower your program runs. So when you think about encrypting data, it can be a challenge. Exchanging data between these two layers costs processing power, which introduces a bottleneck for OpenVPN speed. Such as a connection, there are two different streams that are going through. Like any other protocol, OpenVPN has control plane or channel and the data channel. So messages for each of these paths or streams are going through the same connection. Control channel is being used for key exchange, authentication, parameter negotiation, like cipher and etc. And data channel is where the real user traffic is being exchanged. So to improve performance, this is where we want to focus because that's where the actual user payload is traveling. And since the OpenVPN is a user space application, data channel traffic must cross the kernel space and user space boundary, which cause decrease in performance. As you see on this slide, we see the packets are coming from internet through our Ethernet or Ethernet 0, which is our network interface. So when the packet comes in, it needs to go to user space so OpenVPN can process the packet, which means to decrypt the packet since traffic through this tunnel is encrypted, and possibly to do some kind of routing, so sending it back to kernel space again and then to the tunnel 0, and finally to the user space again to the application. So exchanging data between these two layers costs processing power, which introduces a bottleneck for OpenVPN speed, as I mentioned earlier. The implementation of OpenVPN Data Channel Offload or OpenVPN DCO has resulted in a Linux kernel module responsible for managing the OpenVPN data channel. This is just a virtual device driver in the Linux kernel that implements the OpenVPN data channel. As a result of this implementation, the need for OpenVPN to transmit data traffic between user and kernel space for routing and encryption, decryption has been eliminated. Now, all operations involving payloads happens with the kernel space and enhancing performance. So what happens in DCO is the packet arrive in the OpenVPN DCO kernel module, both data and control packets, and then the control packets are transferred to the OpenVPN process as they were before. So the OpenVPN process listens on a port for OpenVPN packet or for VPN packets and receive those. But data packets are filtered away in a kernel directly and don't arrive at the OpenVPN process anymore. but are decrypted and encrypted in the kernel and sent to the relevant network interface directly without even touching the OpenVPN process in a user space. This eliminates the delay and cost associated with transferring payloads between user and kernel space. So this was a quick introduction about the OpenVPN Data Channel Offload. Now let's do demo. And as I mentioned earlier, we're going to look at how to install and enable DCO on Access Server and how to enable it on Connect app. And then we're going to look at the user experience when DCO is enabled on Access Server and Connect app and so on. So as you can see, I'm on the admin UI right now. And if we look at here, the version is 2.12.0. This is the minimum version that you need to have on Access Server in order to have DCO. As you can see, my DCO or data channel offload shows inactive because it's not installed. So if I go to Advanced VPN, as you can see, the OpenVPN DCO module is not installed and the option is no. So one thing I want to mention here, if a non-compatible configuration is detected, the kernel module is not going to be available and it's going to automatically disable and Access Server will revert back to normal operations. Now you can see there is a documentation here explaining how to install kernel module. Now, if you can see that the option here and the available option is no here, but even if I turn it to yes and go click on save settings and update my running server, here we go. Let's see, the running server is updated. If I go to the status page, still shows inactive because we didn't install it. So even the option is there, but you have to install it first in order to be able to use it. So let me go turn it back off again and save settings and update running server. And here we go. Now, again, it's not available. So I'm going to click on this documentation. And if you scroll down, there's an introduction. If you scroll down, there is going to be some steps that you need to take to install the DCO. Update, upgrade, then reboot, and then install the OpenVPN DCO. I have a session going to my Access Server. So you just basically copy these commands and run it on your Access Server. Now, doing this is going to take a few minutes. So I'm just going to start rebooting this machine and then switch to another Access Server that I already installed the DCO earlier. This way I can save some time. So this is another Access Server that I have. And as you can see, the kernel the version is 2.12. The kernel version is inactive. But when I go to Advanced VPN, here we go. Now you can see that DCO module is available, but it is not enabled. Now, before I enable this, I want to show you the user experience before we enable DCO. So let me go to user management, user permissions, and we'll see I have one user on this server, Ella. So we're going to connect as Ella, and we're going to run a couple of tests. So let me go ahead, connect, type the password here, and here we go, click OK. And Ella is connected. Now, I have a folder here on my computer with a lot of files. And there is a server where the Access Server is. I'm going to connect to that server. As you can see, there's a shared folder and there are some files and folders under that. Let me bring this folder. This is on my local machine here. Let me bring out the Connect app in front. This is on local machine and I have old videos. If I look at the properties, about 8 gigs of data here. So we're going to go ahead, try to copy this folder across the network to that server where the Access Server is. Now, as expected, if you look at the stats on the Connect app, it shows 5.5 meg per second. And then you can see the bytes in, bytes out. On the Windows, it shows somewhere between 3 to 4, 5 megs per second on transfer. Now, at duration, if you look at it, we just hit the minute mark and we are at 1% completed when it comes to copying the folder across the network. So this is how the user experiences without the DCO enabled. Let me go ahead and stop this and close this one. And I'm going to disable or disconnect from the Access Server. Now let's go ahead and bring the Connect app again. And I'm going to go to menu and then click, here we go. Why is not clicking? Click, okay. Go to settings and scroll down. You have to scroll all the way down and then expand settings or advanced settings. And you're going to see enable DCO. I'm going to check that box to enable it. One more thing you need to pay attention, security level. You want to make sure that it's on preferred. If it was on legacy by default, you need to change that. Otherwise, you get an error message. Now, we have DCO enabled on client app, but not on the access server. So let's see what happens. I'm going to type the password here. I'm connecting as Ella again. So Ella is connected. Let me reconnect to that server where the access server is, same location. And here we go. Double click on share. And I'm going to delete that last time we tried to copy this, the old videos. Okay, so now we're going to do same thing again. I'm going to look at this old video, same folder, 8.02 gigs, and then I'm going to copy it across the network to the server. And as you can see, almost the same result, nothing better, nothing worse. 3.94 megs per second on the stats. You can see bytes in, bytes out. On the Windows, it shows 3 to 4.5, 5 megs per second. Again, no changes whatsoever. And the duration, we're getting close to a minute. I mean, another 4 seconds is going to minute, and we're almost at 1% here. We go, we're just at 1%. So again, no changes when the DCO is enabled on the Connect app, but disabled on access server. So let me disconnect here. Let me delete this folder and disconnect from access server. Now we're going to go to settings, double check here. Our DCO is enabled. I'm going to leave it enabled, and I'm going to go back to my access server and enable it here. So advanced VPN, and we're going to toggle the switch here to enable the DCO. Scroll down, click on Save Settings, and Update Running Server. And here we go. The server is running. And if I go to status page, you can see my kernel data channel offloading is active now. So I have DCO enabled on access server and DCO enabled on client app. So let's go ahead and test, see what happens. I'm going to connect as Ella again. Let me type the password. And here we go. Okay. And Ella is connected. Let me bring my folder here. Again, I got the old videos here. Connect to that server. Let me bring the run box. And okay. And here we go. Go to share. And now we're going to go ahead and copy old videos again to this server. And now if you look at the stats, you can see it's a lot higher. And as the connection stabilizes, you can see the number is going higher. Now we got about 16 megs here showing bytes in and out. And on the Windows, it shows about 22 megs per second. Now this stats at 31 meg. So the number is going up. And the duration, look at this. It's about 50 seconds. And we are at 4% already. And right now we're getting consistently around between 30 and 40 megs per second on the stats. And as you can see, 6% complete, just a little bit over a minute. So you can see the difference in performance when we have DCO enabled on both access server and client. Now, we're going to do another test here. So on the client, I'm going to go ahead and turn off the DCO. So I'm going to go to advanced settings and uncheck this box. Now, we got DCO enabled on access server, but not on the client. So let's see what happened in this situation. I'm going to connect again with Ella. Click OK. And here we go. We're connected. So let me go back and connect to that server. And here we go. Double click. And I'm going to get rid of that old videos again. So let's go ahead and copy the folder. Remember, access server has DCO enabled, but the client doesn't have it. So we're going to see the speed. Again, it's a lot better than having DCO off on access server. Not as good as when we had DCO on both. So as you can see, the Windows shows about 16, 17, 19 megs per second. The bytes in and out is about 28 megs, and we're on a little bit shy of a minute, and we already have 5% complete when it comes to copying the file. So you can see the effect of data channel offload on the performance of a user as far as the user experience goes when it comes to connecting to the network through the access server. So this was a quick demo and explanation about data channel offload. Again, remember the minimum version for access server needs to be 2.12.0. I'd like to thank everyone for joining me on this webinar. Now, if you have any questions, please go ahead, type it in the Q&A box. And if I don't get to all the questions, I'll make sure that someone follow up with an email. Thank you very much and have a great day.